And welcome back, footy fans. It's another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another waffle wrap up. And ladies and gentlemen, we've come to it. I know it has been, I think it's 6 weeks, unfortunately, since we have graced the screens with a waffle wrap up. And joining me, as always, my faithful co host, joining me from Perth, West Australia. I know it's early. Rick, how are you doing, sir?
Yeah, it is a little early, but it's not too bad. I'm well, mate. How you doing?
I am not doing too bad. Happy to be able to
That's
talk
good.
some waffle footy and to get us ready for finals. We are here. The season is over. We have the five in the finals, but we got to break down how we get to the five. We last left off from round 13. So from rounds 14 through 20, I know it's 6 rounds of footy, and we were kind of discussing this off mic. Thoughts on what we've seen? Because as we were kind of saying off mic, unfortunately, rounds 14 and 15 had a couple of classics. Unfortunately, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you see it, your Swans have pretty much participated in both of those games. And then unfortunately, the top five teams just kind of showed their might the rest of the season.
Yeah, pretty much. That was pretty good last 6 weeks of fixtures. The top five didn't change as far as the teams in it after round 14, but the combination changed considerably. East Perth were on top of the ladder at that stage and looking pretty good. As we get to around 20, they end up fifth, or well, fourth actually. Sorry, fourth. But yeah, all the other teams in the top five were beating each other. East Fremantle were the form team and still are the form team. West Perth put together some wins in a row. Swans put some wins together to sort of get some wins on the board for their season. Claremont started to lose a few games. And the bottom side, South Perth and West Coast continues to struggle to the end of the season. But yeah, some exciting games. Round 14 and 15, a couple of close ones where Swans, as you said, finally got a couple of wins, one after the siren. Um, yeah, the other games, there wasn't a lot of close games with some of the rounds, a few blowouts in there. But yeah, let's go through those rounds and see where we ended up from round 14 to round 20.
Fantastic. So we jumped to round 14 and go all the way back to July, but we'll go through it as West Perth beat the West Coast Eagles 76-48. The South Frio Bulldogs escape a scare from the Perth Demons 69-62. The Sharks of East Fremantle knock off Peel 84-65. As we said, round 14, a classic between Subi and Swan Districts as the Black Ducks get a 2-point win over the Lions, and the East Perth Royals knock off Claremont, who were still going pretty well at this time, but starting to slide a little bit, 82-58. So we'll go to it. Two really good games in this round. We'll start off with the one that I know you were keeping an eye on, and that is Swan Districts escaping a scare from the Subiaco Lions.
Yeah, there's a bit of an upset there with Swans a bit lower on the ladder than Subiaco, but Swans were, as they have been most of the year, in the game pretty much the whole way through. It was a topsy-turvy game, the last quarter going both ways. Tom Edwards, who had a shot after the siren in the previous game between Swans and Subi, which also went down to the wire, obviously, with the last kick. He missed that shot. In this game, he kicked 4 last quarter goals, all our goals in the last quarter, to get us over the line in a bit of a thriller. It was a great game. But Swans finally getting a win in a close one, which was the second for the season, and then the following week we do pretty much the same. We'll talk about and get to round 15. And South and Perth's game was pretty close all the way through, with South getting up with a win by 7 points. I think one of the positive signs for this round was the West Coast West Perth game, even though West Perth won by 28 points. They were 7-0 in front at quarter time. The Eagles then won each of the remaining 3 quarters to outscore them by 7-3, probably their most impressive performance of the season. They started to get a few numbers back and putting up a pretty good show for a couple of weeks there. And then it went back downhill after that. So their performances for a couple of weeks in round 14 and 15 were pretty good. But then, they went back
Well,
to
it's
not
kind of
showing up on the day. Yeah,
Well, it's kind of like their AFL squad. I think around that time they got a couple of guys back, and then they went through like had 2 or 3 injuries up in the AFL. And I think you
yeah,
could kind of tell when the AFL got a few guys back, then the WAFL started to play a little bit better. Unfortunately, it didn't stay
yeah,
consistent because neither were the AFL Eagles, unfortunately. So we jumped to
yeah.
round 15 as we see East Perth knock off Peel Thunder 96-69. Subi bounces back after that tough loss to smash the Perth Footy Club 122-43. West Perth with a hiding over Claremont. I had to say this one shocked me when I saw the
Mm.
score 114-65. And the thriller at Steel Blue Oval as the Swans get a 3-point win, as you said, goal after the siren over the West Coast Eagles, 83-80. And I remember messaging you after I saw the result, and you were like, they kicked it after the siren. So I this had to be kind of a roller coaster game for you because Swans started well. West Coast kind of fights back. Swans takes the lead. West Coast takes the lead, and then Swans have the ability to kick one after the siren, put it through, get some positive momentum. And at that time, we're still in communication and we're still in talks of potentially making finals.
Yeah, there was an outside chance there, but we should have obviously beaten West Coast by a lot more than we did on that day. So we're very lucky to get away with the win there. In the last probably 30 seconds of the game, uh, the West Coast went into the side the forward 50. They had 3-on-1. Harry Barnett was a young ruckman on the Eagles senior list. He took a shot on the goal off balance from about 45 metres out instead of probably handballing it over the top to a bloke who could have run into an open goal. He kicked the point. Swans had 3 kicks straight out the middle, up to the wing, a handball, ended up on the forward 50. Tom Edwards took the mark, siren went, and he kicked the goal after the siren. So that was an escape, I think, for Swans. And they remain now the only team that's still the West Coast haven't beaten in the WAFL. So 8-0 is our record against the West Coast team. So that was a pretty good win there. Claremont's loss to West Perth was a bit of a turn up. West Perth had started their run of 6 games in a row to end the season, 6 wins in a row to end the season, which actually is going to be was the most a team has won in a row to end the season and not play finals since East Perth in 1951. So the Falcons, could have caused some damage if they had made the finals. Claremont at that stage, that was their second out of 4 games in a row that they would lose, which was a bit of a turn up. They were travelling quite well. Around 15, they were still second, but they find themselves dropped down to fifth on the ladder for the finals. But Subi's big win there was pretty much expected over Perth. They bounced back after their loss to Swans the previous week. So
Mm.
good round with a couple of close ones, but yeah, pretty one sided there for a couple of games too.
Yeah, unfortunately. And this would lead to a run of a lot of games, unfortunately, that they were not as close. I mean, we do have a nice one. We go to round 16 again, only a 2-game slate sees the Fremantle Derby as South Fremantle fall to East Fremantle by 12, 60-48. And Subiaco with another nice win over East Perth, 95-54. The 12-point win is a close one. 2 goals. It's close. It's competitive, but it's not the nail biters that we had been seeing some previous rounds. And unfortunately, this trend would continue the rest of the home and away season.
Yeah, I guess the talking point of this round was East Fremantle breaking the 15-game losing streak against South Fremantle.
Mhm.
They hadn't won a game for I think it was 2000 and I can't remember 13 or something ridiculous that they hadn't beaten South Fremantle. I
Mhm.
don't think it was quite that long. But it's been quite a while since East Fremantle had beaten South Fremantle, so it was one of the monkeys that they had to get off their back, thinking that they can't win a flag unless they beat South Fremantle. They did that. There was only 2 goals, a low-scoring game, but it was enough for them to get the victory and jump back up to second on the ladder. Subi knocking off East Perth, who were just going through a little bit of a slump at that stage. It didn't really end the season with a lot of momentum, the Royals, unfortunately. But yeah, the big win was East Fremantle there by a couple of goals over South.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So we jump to an August 5th season, a cracking game again. Like I said, I was looking at the scores and keeping track of it, watched a few of the highlights, and unfortunately, a lot of these games got away from some of these. We start off as your Swans get a nice little win over South Fremantle, 87-50, a nice 37-point win there. As you kind of said, the West Coast Eagles luck falls out as Peel Thunder smashed them by 98, 132. 34. East Fremantle knocks off Claremont by 20, 76-56. And the West Perth Falcons with a nice little 40-point win over the Perth Demons, 114-74. So a little bit, I bet you were probably smiling a little bit. A third win by the Swans in a row with this 37-point win over the Doggies. And East Fremantle continuing to pile on the pain for Claremont at this time with their 20-point win.
Yep. Yeah, no, it was a good win for Swans. 3 quarters, the game was tight. 5 goals to nothing in the last quarter. Got us over the line and a bit of comfort. And it was actually nice to watch the last quarter and not stressing probably after the 15-minute mark that we're actually going to win a game comfortably and not going down to the final kick of the game, which was good. Yeah, Peel just decimated West Coast. West Coast all back to having 5 AFL listed players. The Dockers had about 12 in that game. Shows the strength of both of the AFL lists. And Peel, easy victory there. They should have won by more. 19 goals, 18. That's a lot of behinds they kicked. Kicking a bit straighter, they could have got their record ever biggest win in their history, but they didn't quite manage that. They've only had one 100-point win in the history of Peel Thunder, so they weren't too far off that. East Fremantle beating Claremont, pretty comfortable win when you look at the margin, but Claremont's goal kicking, 7 goals, 14, inaccurate kicking for a team that's generally been pretty accurate through the season. But again, that was their 3rd loss in a row for Claremont, so that had dropped them down to 5th. So within a couple of weeks, have gone from 1st down to 5th already. At that stage, West Perth were 2 games behind out of the 5. So the top 5 was starting to take shape, but West Perth was still an outside chance. Even at that stage, Swans, they had to have everything aligned for them to make the finals at 3 games behind at that stage. So there wasn't really much hope, but they were still in there with a chance after 3 wins in a row. But yes, Claremont, that was their 3rd loss in a row. West Perth, at that stage, I think had won 3 in a row. Swans had won 3 in a row. So there's a few teams there with a few streaks happening. But yeah, the disappointment in the Eagles and Perth that round just continued.
Unfortunately, we jump to it round 18, only 3 rounds to go as Peel Thunder continue to add the pain to Claremont's run towards the end is the 91-59 win over the Tigers. A cracking game between the Easts. East Fremantle knock off East Perth 96-82. Your Swans get another win over Perth 98-70. Subiaco brings the pain with a 69-point win over the West Coast Eagles. And the West Perth Falcons knock off South Fremantle 91-55. So a nice 12-point cracker with a couple of teams in the 8 playing quite a heck of a game between the 2 Easts of the WAFL.
Yeah, that was definitely the game of the round. Was a top of the table clash. I think that was the 3rd or 4th top of the table clash we've had in the year. Again, that just shows how much that top 5 has changed position over the year. And I think East Perth were involved in 3 of those. So this one here, the Sharks getting the victory by a couple of goals. Again, accurate kicking for East Fremantle, 15-6 to 12-10. East Perth with 1 more scoring shot were unable to win that game. So great win there for the Sharks. And that probably was the one that won them the top spot on the ladder, really, that game, because East Perth were pretty much up there at that particular stage. So a good win there for Subi. Subi jumped from 3rd up to 2nd to the top 2 spots, and they'd remain in that 2nd spot until the end of the season. So a good win for Subi. Again, smashing West Coast. Swans a comfortable win over Perth, as you mentioned, and a good win also for Peel over Claremont, who that was their last of their 4-game losing streak. They'd go on to win their last 2 games, but the Tigers had really struggled to put any good performances together. And I think they were sort of struggling with Jack Buller, who had got drafted mid-year. I think they were just struggling to find the right forward line combination. But the last 2 rounds, they seem to have found it. So that's positive for the Tigers and should give them some momentum going into the finals.
Unfortunately, they seem to find momentum against the team that you barrack for. Unfortunately, in the next round is in round 19. As you said, Claremont finds their feet with a 123-91 win, a scoring bonanza in this game between the Tigers and the Swans. East Fremantle continue their winning ways that helps them get the top of the ladder as a 112-63 win over the Perth Football Club. The West Perth Falcons continue a nice little streak as an 8-point win over finals contender Peel Thunder 80-72, a 30-point win by Subi over South Fremantle, thus completely ending the Doggies' chances of making finals. And East Perth get their easy win over the West Coast Eagles 114-66, that 8-point cracker between the West Perth Eagles, West Perth Falcons, and Peel Thunder sees the glimmer that West Perth could potentially make finals. It falls a little bit short, but there had to be some positivity in West Perth after another win over a top 5 team.
Oh, definitely. And the West Perth faithful, gosh, haven't stopped hearing from them for the last couple of weeks about the fact that we're going to make the finals. They're going to make the finals. They're going to make the finals. But again, all the stars had to align for them. And as you see in round 20's results, didn't quite get them over the line. But they couldn't have done much better than what they did. Like I said, winning 6 in a row to end the season. This one was a cracker again. West Perth getting over again a very inaccurate Peel Thunder, 9-18 to 12-8. So it's 7 more scoring shots the Thunder had. I think Matt Taberner. He kicked something like 1 goal 4 or something like that, kicked a lot of behinds. Poor kicking is poor football. 1 goal 7 in the last quarter. Turn that around, even 2 or 3 of those has been goals, and Peel would have ended West Perth season there and then. Probably get guaranteed them a second spot on the ladder. As it is, they've ended up finishing 3rd, but a big win there for West Perth. A great effort by them to finish the season. The other results, I think, pretty well went to plan. Claremont's win over Swans, that was sort of set up in the first 5 minutes. Claremont had 3 goals on the board before Swans even seemed to run out on the ground. But it was a great game, 18 goals to 14, very high scoring, sort of reminiscent of football in days gone, where, teams would kick 100 points a game and still lose. So that was a fun game to watch. But a good win for Claremont to get them back on track.
Definitely, for sure. We jump to it last round of the season. We'll start off as South Fremantle get a nice little win over the West Coast, 149-60. Peel Thunder edge out the Swans 83-73. Claremont with another nice win over the Perth Footy Club 90-41. East Fremantle stapled themselves in the top spot with a 109-59 win over Subi. And West Perth end the season, as you said, on a nice little 6-game winning streak, knocking off Finals 5, East Perth 185. Another great season of WAFL footy. 5 teams have made the finals. Your thoughts on this last round against Swans falling just a little bit short to a very good Peel Thunder side?
Yeah, it was a strong Peel side. I don't like to complain too much, but there's a couple of strange umpiring decisions in that game. But Peel deserved the win. They sort of hung on though after a slow start. Pretty much after halfway through the second quarter, Peel dominated the game and Swans were just hanging in there. We're coming home pretty strong in the last quarter, but didn't quite get over the line. So well done to the Thunder. That secured them. At that stage, they were sort of sitting in 4th place. The 2 games, West Perth, East Perth, Subi and East Fremantle, would be played half an hour after the others. So Peel at that stage knew they'd done best they can to try to get into the top 3 positions. Subi could have consolidated 2nd spot, but East Fremantle well and truly hammered them really in the last quarter. The last quarter, 9 goals they kicked to 1. The game was pretty much level up to 3-quarter time, and the Sharks really put their foot down and probably really secured premiership favouritism, securing top spot on the ladder with a massive 50-point win in the end. But having a look at the ladder, it was 1 goal kicked by West Perth right at the end of the game. Mitch Pearce kicked the goal, which extended West Perth's lead out to 15 points. If he didn't kick that goal, the ladder would have been different. East Perth would have been 3rd, potentially even close to 2nd because of the percentages. There was less than 2 percentage points between Subi in 2nd place and East Perth in 4th place. So that goal kicked East Perth out of the qualifying final, which gives them a second chance. That puts them down into the elimination final, which is a sudden death knockout. West Perth couldn't quite get the job done. They obviously needed Perth to upset Claremont, which was probably never on the cards. If Swans had a beaten Peel, the margin wouldn't have been enough to knock Peel out of the 5. Swans needed to win by 10 goals. An exciting finish. And again, we mentioned it offline. Subiaco with 12 wins finished 2nd. So did Peel, East Perth, Claremont, all with 12 wins. West Perth 1 game behind. So they missed out the finals by 1 game. they could have finished second if they had won one more game.
Hmm.
So, it's a very, very close finish. Probably the not the most recent, but another season back in 1978 or similar. The team on the top of the ladder, Perth, were 2 games clear. I think it was Claremont or South Fremantle that finished fifth, 1 game behind second, and that stage was a top four. So pretty close finish. And it's really exciting, even though my Swannies aren't in the final yet again. But I'm used to that, unfortunately. Um, the top five, I think anyone can win.
Hmm.
Yes, there's a knockout between East Perth and Claremont, so only one of them can potentially win. But any one of those top five teams we'll give it a shake. And I think probably preview a bit more coming up next.
Yeah. So we'll go, like I said, we'll kind of, as you kind of said, from fifth to second, all have the same number of points. So it was percentage, as you kind of said. I mean, Claremont finishes 48 points in fifth with a percentage of 123.2, only 6.7 percentage points behind East Perth for fourth. Then that fun gap of 0.2% between East Perth and Peel for fourth and third. Subiaco finishing second, 131.5. And as we said, East Fremantle, the number one seed with 56 points, a 2-game gap between them and Subi. Sir, those are your five teams that make it to the finals. And again, I've seen the bracket, but I actually will let you have this because not everybody knows this. In case they don't know, the WAFL is 5. So really quickly, explain to me the finals and then preview this because, as you kind of said, 5 teams. I think all 5, if things go right, could win this thing. East Perth and Claremont, whoever wins this, they've still got a shot, a couple of wins, and you're
Mm.
in a grand final.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, definitely very, very tight. And it's great because in years gone past, probably the last 10, 15 years, there's been a strong, strong favourite, and it's generally a team called Subiaco. Yes, they're amongst the 5 this time, but I don't think they're favourite. I think, I've seen them play Swans twice and we should have beaten them both times. I wasn't that impressed, but, they've finished second. So they're a strong side. They've got great experience in finals. They're the most experienced final side out of the teams that are in there. East Fremantle, East Perth haven't played a lot of finals. East Perth since 2016. It's been a while for them. East Fremantle last year was their first finals for a number of years as well. Peel with a lot of Dockers players. Yes, they've got a lot of Dockers players, but they're young, inexperienced when it comes to finals. Claremont have got a lot of finals experience, so they're in the show. So now, the big thing to explain the top 5. So the top 5 works. So East Fremantle, they are on top of the ladder, so they get a bye in the first round. So they go straight into the second semi-final. The winner of the qualifying final between Subiaco and Peel will then play East Fremantle in that second semi-final. The loser between Subi and Peel in the qualifying final will play the winner of the elimination final, which is between East Perth and Claremont. The loser of that game obviously is gone, is out. So going into the second week, you have the first and second semi-final. The winner of the second semi-final goes straight into the grand final. Then the loser plays the winner of the first semi-final in the preliminary final. And then obviously the winner of the preliminary final plays the winner of the second semi-final in the grand final. So it may sound a little bit confusing, but yeah, it works out pretty well, and that's definitely the advantage of finishing on top because East Fremantle only need to win one final and they go straight into the grand final, where Claremont would have to win 3, for example, or East Perth would have to win 3 finals to get into the grand final. So, yep, so a big final series coming up, and I can't wait to have a chat to the end of the season to see how it all went.
It's gonna be absolutely mental. And the other thing that you kind of look at it too is that with that elimination finals, you're gonna have to win 4 games to win a premiership. Where
Yeah,
if you're top seed, you only have to win 2. So there's going to be 2 less games on your legs. So it'll be fascinating to see. I love the format. It really does. It says, hey, number one seed, here's your little gift. I mean, you basically
yeah,
1 game and you're in a grand final. The only thing that would be a little frustrating is that the amount of time between that extra week. So you're only going
yeah.
to play 2 games in the span of a month. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like some of the discussions when it comes to the AFL is you win your qualifying final, you're into a preliminary final. You may only play 2 games in the span of a month to get to
Yeah.
a grand final. So it's very, very interesting. Like I said, rest versus rust. It's always the fascinating
Mm,
one. So I
yep.
think since there's only so many games, I think I want to test you, Rick. I want to see. I'm going to make you do a bracket challenge. I want you to tip to see
Yep.
who is going to raise the flag at the end of this final. So we will start off with the elimination final. East Perth, Claremont. Can Claremont's experience, as you said, in finals really help them against an inexperienced East Perth team making its first final appearance, as you said, in over 7 years?
Yeah, I do have a soft spot for East Perth. Growing up in the area and playing one little league game for them way back in 1985. But I think Claremont will get over the line. Yeah, I think Claremont will win that just in a very close game. The last few games, last half dozen games between these sides has been won by the home side, so that would mean East Perth would win this. But I think Claremont's form with those last 2 wins over Swans and Perth, although teams in the bottom rung of the ladder, they just look like they found their mojo. And Claremont in finals, finals are a completely different ballgame as such, but Claremont in finals usually do quite well. So I think they will just get over the line in the elimination final. Sorry to my Royals fans out there.
It happens, unfortunately. You know what? I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna tip this. I'm shooting a little bit of it. I shoot a little bit in the dark here, but I think I agree with you. As you said, that the experience I think is great. It's great that East Perth got there, but I think Claremont started to find some form a little bit. And I think, as you said, that experience in finals I think will become good. I think Dave will actually talk to me online if I actually pick Claremont for this one. So Dave, shout out to you. I know you're going to watch this when you see this. I will pick Claremont to move on. Unfortunately, East Perth done, but as we said, a lot of experience for this young team. Very, very in the future. We will jump to the qual. We will jump to we call it qualifying
The
final.
qualifying
I just
final,
wanted to
correct?
be
Yep,
sure
that's
that I
right.
had the right wording because I didn't want to say prelim. So the qualifying final between Subi and Peel. I'm fascinated on your thoughts on this. I'm going to tip Peel in this one. As you kind of said,
Mm,
I think Subi's kind of had some moments where they've played down to their opponent. Peel has that experience with some AFL caliber players. And be interested to know what the rules are, how many, since Fremantle is done, how many can come down and potentially get a few games in. I will defer to you on this one. I'll tip Peel in this one. I think Peel's experience and AFL caliber talent, being able to play it, I think will give them a little bit of an advantage. So I have the Thunder moving on to place
mm.
East Fremantle in that other semifinal.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on who those AFL players are that are playing for the Thunder. They've got 14 players qualified, but they're only allowed to play 12. But it's whether the Dockers will release these players. You know, there may be
Mm-hmm.
players that get sent in for surgery. That some of the experienced players, do they want to play? The players like Travis Collier, who hasn't played an AFL game, Nathan Wilson, who's actually a Peel product initially anyway. Do they want to play? Will the Dockers let them play? Some of the younger Dockers players, do they put them in cotton wool?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really tough for to pick this one, particularly this early in the week. If I could see the team that's put out on
Mm-hmm.
Thursday, I'd be more confident. But I'm probably leaning to the way you've picked there, and think Peel and probably what may be a slight upset. Only 1.4% between the two teams over the season, and Peel
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly have never lost to Subi in finals. They've played 3 finals, including 2 grand finals, and Peel have won all 3 finals matches against Subi, and they've only actually beaten Subi about 12 times in the history, and so three of them in finals. So I think Peel just in this one.
Unwittingly tipping with it with
Mm,
the trend. That's awesome. I love it. So
mm.
okay, so we both have Peel facing East Fremantle in that semifinal. Who gets that automatic jump to the grand final?
Yeah, I think East Fremantle will go straight through to the grand final. They've got a strong side. They've got some really good players not playing in their league side at the moment. Murdoch, Dylan O'Reilly can't get a spot in the finals in the team coming back from injuries. So they've got a lot of depth. So I think East Fremantle with the bigger bodies will be too strong for Peel and probably win that by a couple of goals. There won't be a lot in it, but I think they will get straight through to the grand final. And the other semi would be Subi yep, would be Subi and Claremont,
Mhm.
as we both picked Peel and Claremont to win. So still not stealing your thunder there, but the first semi final, where do we go with that one? Probably Subi in that one.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go with you on the first, but the second one I'm gonna change it a little bit. I like the Sharkies. This is another one. It's the rest versus rust argument here. I think first game of the finals, there won't be as much rust. It's the grand final will be the question,
Mm.
as I kind of agree with you. I think Peel is solid. Peel is solid, but I kind of like East Fremantle. I think they've been playing really good footy towards the end, so I agree with you on that one. But I think I'm going to take Claremont because I think
Hmm.
Subi. The little issue I run into is that, as you kind of said, Claremont has the experience. I think they're kind of finding their form. Sometimes they get that little chip on their shoulder a little bit that they had to play in the elimination finals. So I think I'm gonna have Claremont move on to play Peel Thunder in that preliminary final on that one. So a little bit different. So you have Peel
Yeah,
versus Subi, the rematch in the preliminary final.
yeah.
Who gets the crack at East Fremantle in the grand final?
Well, again, so it's a repeat of the qualifying final, obviously there. So, but I'm going to turn around this time. I'm going to say Subi. I'm going
All
to say
right.
Subi sneaker victory there somehow. I'm not sure how. So I think Isha Man on Subi in the grand final.
All righty. So, and I have Peel versus Claremont for the right to face East Fremantle. Dave, I love you, but I think I'm finally going to get off the Tigers train a little bit. I think I'm going to tip Peel in this one again. I agree with you. I'm fascinated to see if they get some of the AFL branded players down there. I think they'll have the experience. I'll put Peel on. I want to see another rematch between Peel and East Fremantle. I think it'd be a fantastic grand final at Optus Stadium. So I will go Peel v East Fremantle in the grand final. You have Subi v East Fremantle in the grand final. Who do you have holding up the premiership at the end of time at Optus Stadium?
I think the Sharks, they deserve it. Not that the team always deserves the final. And Subi have won too many. So let's go with Isha Mantle. Between 1998, since they won one, Subi have won a dozen or so by that since then. So I hope Isha Mantle smash them in the grand final and Isha Mantle win by 10 goals.
Oh, the cruel get Subi to the grand final so then they can be humiliated in the granny. I love it. I'm with you. I like East Fremantle the way they're going. I think Peel by that time will have had that extra game. The rest versus rust will be fascinating that first quarter just because of the fact that you have that extra week. If Peel can get up on East Fremantle, then it could be an interesting game. But if East Fremantle can weather the storm a little bit from a Peel team that's going to have some energy because they'll played the week before and get it to the deep waters, per se, and not trying to pun a shark pun here, but get them into the deep waters a little bit, then they can be able to kind of attack on heavier legs because they'll have one more game on them. So I agree with you. East Fremantle getting a premiership. I know I'm shooting in the dark here on this one. Unfortunately, I don't have nearly the knowledge that you do. I've been trying to keep track of it. It is always so much fun. This has been a blast. I absolutely love the product that the WAFL has put out this year. I think this is going to be a fantastic final. I am definitely going to keep an eye on every single one of these games, no matter what. As we kind of said, all five teams have an opportunity if it gets there. I agree with you. I think the favorites the best chance of winning the premiership. So I cannot wait for this. Rick, thank you so much for doing this. This has been so fantastic to be able to chat with you. And it's always fun to see your thought process on this because again, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time watching the WAFL and even the WAFL W this season.
Yeah, no worries, mate. It's been a pleasure to be involved with you for the year. And as I said in many of the podcasts, it's great that an American over there so far away has interest in the great game of Australian rules football, and more importantly, in the local leagues and the state leagues. And it's not all about AFL. The AFL juggernaut, which is there and takes over the world as far as footy. But yeah, so it's great to have these conversations with you. Time difference makes it a bit difficult later in the evening for you and early in the mornings for me. But it's been
Mhm.
fun, and let's have another chat after the grand final, and I guess do a bit of a debrief on the season if you're up for that, and we'll see if how how bad our predictions were or how good they were
How
for the
good.
finals and see if we got egg on our face.
Right, well, hey,
Yeah, but
there's only a couple
yeah,
of differences between the two and that, so we're
yeah,
either going to look like absolute geniuses or absolute muppets, one of those two. It
yeah,
doesn't really matter. But and the cool part about it is I have had the pleasure of talking with some people out on the waffle. I know I let you know that Paul Persick, the
yeah,
fantastic announcer, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with him, and what a great story he is, and such an enthusiastic waffle supporter. Absolutely loved it. And then got to
yeah,
chat with inaugural East Perth Royal from the women's team, Sarah Madden, which was a very fun conversation that I
yeah,
had with her. And I've got a few irons in the fire for a couple of waffle community chats over the off season, and I want to put it out here now. And again, I will also repeat this later. Come the off season, I want to sit down and have some more chats with some more waffle fans. I want to find out more. Unfortunately, I did not get to all the clubs this last off season, so I'm hoping this off season I can sit down and have a chat with all of the 9 unconnected teams. Well, PLI will, even though they're connected, they do have a history besides being
yeah,
connected to Fremantle. So West Coast is the only one I will stay away when it comes to waffle talk, but I want to be able to sit down and have a chat with fans from all of the clubs because I think it's been so fun meeting you, Rick, when we talked about Swans. As I said earlier in the podcast, Dave talked to me about Claremont. I had the pleasure of talking with a West Perth fan as well, and you guys were so engaging. It was so much fun hearing the stories of such a great competition. So, like I said, off season is going to be footy mad. I gotta get to March, so I cannot wait for it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our episode today. Again, keep an eye out. More coverage, Stanful, VFL, Waffle, AFL, and AFLW coverage coming up very, very soon. And then in the off season, my supporter series, like I always do. So that'll do it for our episode and another episode of Donnie's Disposals. We'll see you again very,